Hello everyone, welcome. So in my last video, I played with a stamp and stencil combo, and today I'm going to be playing with a glimmer plate and stencil combo. They're actually separate clubs from Spellbinders, but they do coordinate together, or you can use them separate. So the Glimmer of the Month Club is a new club that I picked up from Spellbinders this month, and I'm so excited to be able to play with this. Today's glimmer plate is called Card Front Floral, and I'm also combining it with the stencil of the month, which is called Lively Floral. So I'm jumping right into card number 1. I have a piece of Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending, but before I do my foiling, so I have some beautiful inks from Simon Says Stamp. These are their positively saturated inks. And I want to put some soft colors down. I'm using the glimmer plate to see where I want to put the green for the leaves and the stem, and where I want to put the peachy pinks for the flower. I'm using a big blending brush. I love these things. I just got mine off of Amazon. They're really cheap, but they do a really good job. I'm going to go in with a brighter but a softer green for my next color. I'm going to use the same brush. I'm just going to wipe the color off onto a microfiber cloth first, and I'll pick up the second green color. And I'm starting off on the side of the panel, dabbing it kind of off onto the printer paper before I bring it to my cardstock so I don't get any harsh lines. I'll go up the sides of this panel with this light green. And then I can bring in my peachy pink color last. And I'll put this down at the top of the panel and kind of bring it into the center where the flower is going to be on the glimmer plate. And I kind of got some harsh lines at the top there, but I'll show you what I'm going to do to get around that. I was hoping for a really smooth blend. And I'm bringing in an even darker color of pink. This cheeky color is really pretty, but it's a very pale pink, and I just wanted a little bit of a darker pink. This first card is going to be a mixed media card. I'm going to be doing a lot of things to this panel. But next I'm going to do the actual glimmering. And I was going to wait for the ink on this panel to dry, but I didn't. I went right into the glimmering and everything turned out just fine. I like to tape my glimmer plate onto the panel, and I'm using some gorgeous silver foil. So I'll allow that to heat up, and then once the light stops blinking, I'll pull off the plate, run it through my Platinum 6 machine, and I can just put it back in the glimmer machine, and let's see how this turned out. I like to use my all-in-one tool just to peel off the tape on the sides. I'm kind of holding it down with my magnet tool so I don't burn my fingers. And let me show you this gorgeous floral. And I got a little bit of overfoiling on the corners, but I still thought it was really pretty. So I am going to be adding a little bit of foiling to the edges after I do my stenciling. So here is the Lively Floral stencil. And I'm just adding a little bit of shading to my flower. I'm not going over the whole flower because it's already pink, but I just wanted to put some shadows down at the base of the petals. Here is the second stencil. They are numbered for you. I'll add a little bit of darkness down at the base of these petals. The next stencil would color in the veins on the petals. And since those are already foiled, you don't need to use stencil number 3 if you have the glimmer plate. And then the sentiment on the stencil, you get 2. One says, "Hello, lovely." And the other one says, "For you." But I'm going to use the Hello Lovely sentiment and just ink that up with some black ink. This is my VersaFine Onyx black ink. And then before I peel up the stencil, I am going to wipe it off a little bit so I don't get black ink everywhere. Look how pretty that looks. Now I can add a little more green to the leaves using stencil number 4 and stencil number 5. You can also color in the center of your flower, but I just left it a light pink and silver. And then here is stencil number 5. They're very easy to line up. I like this little sticky mat. It's from Simon Says Stamp, and it just holds the paper and the stencil in place beautifully. And then to peel this off the mat, I like to bend the mat, not my panel, and then I can just easily peel off the panel. Okay, so let's do some more things to this panel. I'm using some white ink, and I'm going to put some spatter on this. I wish I had remembered to cover up my sentiment because I did get a little bit of white spatter over the black ink. That is one thing that I would do over if I could. And then once that has dried, you have some fun speckled white dots on the panel. And last, to add more foiling to the edges so that my overfoiling looks more intentional, I'm going to stipple on a little bit of glue and use some mica flakes. Spellbinders sent me a little sample of these mica flakes. And oh, they are gorgeous. Just use the brush to brush away the excess. And it gives it a really fun, I don't know if you would call it a grunge look or shabby chic maybe. But I really love the look of this. I'm going to add a little more glue at the top of the panel. And again, I'm just stippling it on and pouring over some flakes. These flakes are interesting because they have gold, silver, and green in them. Then I can just gently brush away the excess. That built up, so it was kind of thick there, so I had to scrape the top layer off. Let's do a little more at the top. And it doesn't take much glue. You could even just apply it with your fingers if you wanted to. Let's press in some more mica flakes. And this card is done. Even though it's a single layer card, it's so lovely and interesting to look at. I'll attach this to a side folding white card base. And for one more added touch, I'm going to glue on some silver sequins or confetti pieces. And another thing I would change on this card if I were going to do this again, I would add a more colorful sequin, maybe like a pink. But the silver looks really pretty. And here it is, all done. Let me give you a close-up look at the first card. Now let's get into card number 2. This time I'm just using the stencil by itself. I'm using another piece of Nina Solar White cardstock, 110 pound, and more of the Positively Saturated inks. For the stem of the flower, I'm going to use some brown ink. And these little stencil brushes really helped a lot to get into the small places of this stencil. Now for stencil number 2, it creates more petals. I'm using a darker ink at the bottom. And then I'll come in with a lighter ink for the tips of the petals. But these stencils are nice because they align so easily that I often flip back and forth. I'll add a little more color and use stencil number 1 again. Just kind of go back and forth sometimes. So the tops of the petals are going to be a little more peachy pink. After I'm done with the stencils, I'll go in and clean them off with a baby wipe. However, some of the inks do stain it. And so to get it completely clean, I'll use some archival ink cleaner. Go right over the stencil with a microfiber cloth or a baby wipe, and it cleans them up perfectly. The next stencil, stencil number 3, creates the veins in the petals. And then stencil number 4 creates the green of the leaves. And then the last stencil, stencil number 5, also creates green leaves. And I forgot to color in the center of the flower, so I will flip back to some earlier stencils and take care of that. But here is stencil number 5. And you can see that you don't need the glimmer plate. If you're not subscribed to that club kit, you don't need it. You can absolutely use the stencil all by itself. Okay, now for the center of the flower. Just using more brown to do this, and I put a little bit of a heavier ink at the bottom of the center so that it looks more round. And then I'll come back in with the same brown ink to do the polka dots on it. And then here it is, all done. I'm going to use the For You stencil for this next card. However, I'm going to stencil it out onto a separate piece of white cardstock using more of the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I am going to cut this out with a fishtail die. To add a little more color to the background, I'm using my Puff Dotty stencil. I love this stencil. And I'm going to use a larger brush and just go around my floral with some peach ink. This adds a lot of fun interest to the card. I'm not covering the flower, I'm just going around the edges. Spellbinders has a fabulous 3D embossing folder that coordinates with this stencil, and they are a lot of fun to play with. And here is the panel with the cute dots. I'm also going to chomp 2 of the corners. I'll round the bottom right corner and the top left. This is a 1/2 inch chomp. And I'm doing the same to the card base. This is going to be another relatively 1-layer card, except for the sentiment. That does add a small layer to it. But I'll go ahead and glue this onto the card base. The sentiment I'm going to pop up with some foam squares. And I'll put this at the bottom of the card. I'll add a few pearls around this sentiment. And these are taupe pearls. I love this color. It goes really well with this color scheme. And then here's a close-up look at card number 2. I hope this video gave you some fun ideas of how to use your club kits this month. And if you don't have the club kits, I hope it gave you some ideas of how to use some stencils and glimmer plates that you have in your stash. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.